The Atlantean world crumbled, says Manly Hall in his book Ancient Wisdom, because it wavered from the law. It forgot that nature was the ruler of all things, and in attempting to survive unnaturally, it was destroyed. Mythology is cyclical in nature, universally beginning at a high point, like paradise, or in a golden age, an age of innocence, as Blake might say, or one of a highly evolved and uncorrupted consciousness. The myriad tales that follow trace the devolution from and return to such realms or states. History tells it the other way around, from a different beginning, and the stories that follow concern the evolution toward the attainment of consciousness in a Darwinian sense. The resulting paradigms appear at odds, diametrically opposed, inhabiting either ends of a stark polarity. Yet both ways of looking have their importance in different ways. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist, who brought to the Western imagination the notion of the collective unconscious, speaks of a 2-million-year-old being, an aspect of consciousness residing within us all, a deep racial memory, if you like, containing the whole of human history and prehistory, the full story, the all and the everything, the majority of which has sadly been forgotten and lost in the midst of time. Yet when we delve into this shared collective unconscious, we find remnants of such stories, fragments of dreams, so to speak, that still recall wondrous beginnings and great civilizations, and also tales of how they fell from grace, and, in the myth of Atlantis, brought upon themselves a cataclysmic deluge that swept over the earth, engulfing and destroying all in its wake. Tolkien himself was for many years disturbed by such a dream, which he speaks of in his letter to Christopher Bretherton. This legend, or myth, or dim memory of some ancient history has always troubled me, he says. In sleep, I had the dreadful dream of the ineluctable wave, either coming out of the quiet sea or coming in, towering over the green inlands. The story of Atlantis is said to have always fascinated him, causing him to weave its dark magic into his haunting tale, The Fall of Numenor, part of the Silmarillion and the Lost Tales. And it may well be that in some mysterious way, history and legend mingle and merge, and certainly, as we have said, people from across the globe and over many centuries have told stories of a great distant flood in their different unique ways, from the ancient Sumerian account of Gilgamesh, inscribed on excavated stone tablets from the Bronze Age, through to the biblical tale of Noah, the Ark, and the epic inundation told in Genesis. Such deeply rooted tales speak to us profoundly and on a multiplicity of levels, elucidating truths to be pondered and understood and heeded. Now, the legend of Atlantis tells that from far, far away, maybe even from the stars, maybe even from the distant constellations of the Pleiades and Sirius, those bright clusters towards which the pyramids direct their gaze, beings of pure light once came to the earth. It is said that they were over 12 feet tall, that their skin was golden-hued and translucent. They had little need of food. Spheres of bright light surrounded them, and like Tolkien's elves, they lived for hundreds and hundreds of years. Highly skilled in poetry and song, and in matters of deep learning, they were matrilineal in nature, seeking harmony, not power, and they had no thought or inclination toward war or competition, and they used their gifts wisely to build great temples and places of learning and beauty. They are said to have resonated at a high frequency and could not always be apprehended in the third dimensional sphere, again like Tolkien's elves, who oft-times pass through the forest unseen by men, hobbits and dwarves. They had a great love and understanding of crystals, with which they worked to create beautiful temples, as well as employing them for healing when the need arose, and as a major source of power for their cities, all of which were crowned with crystalline power domes, and the capital, Poseida, it is said, had the most beautiful emerald dome, whose rays embraced the entire realm. This was the golden age of Atlantis, a hallowed time, and for many thousands of years the people prospered and grew, and their influence spread far beyond their borders to distant lands across the sea. Good relations were made, and trade flourished. But little by little, as they came more and more into their human form, their consciousness slowly devolved onto a denser frequency. And as this happened, many previously high beings fell into the realms of duality. Thereafter, they no longer lived for hundreds of years. Their need for food and sustenance increased, and their priorities shifted away from the pursuit of beauty toward material gain, toward power, and eventually to violence and war. And those over whom this shadow had fallen sought to subdue their neighbours and to bring them under their control as slaves. And it is said that the secrets of the sacred crystals were stolen from those who remained true, and that they were gradually subverted, eventually being utilised to create terrible weapons that laid waste their enemies' lands, terrorised their peoples, and brought vast numbers under their dominion. Some say the corrupted Atlanteans eventually became like Tolkien's orcs, once fair and pure souls, now withered and warlike and totally estranged from the light. The ancient Greeks had a version of the story come down to us through Plato. Poseidon, he tells us, lord of the ocean, long ago fell in love with a mortal girl and together they had many sons. And he made a home for them on a beautiful island, and he called it Atlantis. And when the sons were grown, he divided the land into 10 parts, and gave each son dominion over one part, before returning to his home beneath the waves. But there was one law he set in stone before he left, that forbade them, on pain of death, ever to make war with one another. Well, for many years all went well, for you see, they were the sons of a god, and therefore not fully mortal. But as time passed, they forgot themselves. And when the divine portion began to fade away, and the human nature got the upper hand, they then, being unable to bear their fortune, behaved unseemly, and to him who had an eye to see, grew visibly debased. For they were losing the fairest of their precious gifts. But to those who had no eye to see the true happiness, they appeared glorious and blessed at the very time when they were full of avarice and unrighteous power. It was Zeus, god of gods, who first saw what was happening to this once honourable race. And he had gone down to Poseidon and told him. And when Poseidon came and saw for himself, he wept, for his love for his sons and for the fair isles of Atlantis was great indeed. But they had transgressed the law, and Poseidon, though his heart ached, had to uphold it. And so it was that he then stirred up the seas with his great trident, causing huge waves to form and to swirl about the islands. And the sky darkened above, and the people cried out amidst the chaos, and the waves grew higher and higher, and stronger and stronger, and they engulfed the beautiful islands, destroying all in their wake. And the people were drowned and pulled down into the depths of the sea, and thereafter no one knew their story, nor of the wonders they had created, save in dreams and strange imaginings. What we see in Poseidon's dramatic intervention, we also see in other flood stories of antiquity. At this very same moment, when evil has risen to its utmost ascendancy, the gods intervene. In Genesis, God causes a great wind and storm to stir, and rain to fall, and floods to submerge the land. It is the same in the Gilgamesh story, and in Tolkien's downfall of Numenor. Rare moments indeed, brimming with meaning and significance. Free will is sacred within all these pantheons, of course, and yet it seems there are times when humankind goes too far, attracting, if you like, the wrathful interventions of the divine, in order maybe that the great cosmic harmony is not disturbed. Complex notions all, and beyond the scope of this short piece, yet suffice to say, the tales clearly tell that there are absolute boundaries that cannot be violated nor gone beyond, and that there are cataclysmic consequences for those who attempt to do so. For such people, the story ends abruptly here, as they are drowned and pulled down into the depths, maybe to come again to earth one day, to try again, maybe not. Yet for others, those who somehow escape or are miraculously saved from the divine wrath, the great journey continues. Tolkien tells his friend that only after he had written about his dream of the great flood did he cease to be troubled by it. "I don't think I have had it since I wrote The Downfall of Numenor," he writes. "It still occurs occasionally, though now exercised by writing about it. It always ends by surrender." Sometimes the unconscious speaks to us of matters of a purely personal nature, yet sometimes, and there is a wealth of evidence to support this, it speaks of matters of immense collective significance. Tolkien's dream is clearly along these lines, and in setting it down for us, in giving it form, in the shape of the Numenor tale, he has represented it in his own unique way for our collective attention. All of these tales, ancient and modern alike, were conceived and set down long before our current climate crisis came to the fore, and yet seem as pertinent now as they ever were. It is salutary to consider that civilizations do not last forever, but rise and fall in their cycles. Pondering the fragments of these long-lost tales can be most enlightening, for above all, they show us the moral conditions that might bring about the fall of civilizations, and these things are crucial for all of us.